Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I am your host, Brian Scott. And today, I wanted to discuss one of the central tenets of the Reality Revolution, and that is the densities of experience, as I've come into a greater realization of the way these densities work. Of course, I've talked about it on the podcast many times, and the amazing thing about this material is you slowly start to understand more and more about it. Biggest revelation is that fourth density involves a different photon of light. This photon carries more information. We're moving through densities of experience of complexity. This complexity is a greater understanding of what's actually happening. There has been misunderstandings in the past by people that misinterpret the law of one material. So this helps to clarify what's going on. If you have not heard of the law of one, what I'm referring to is the raw material, which is a set of channelings started in 1981 by a group of three people, Carla Ruckert, Jim McCarty, and Don Elkins. And one person asked the questions, one person transcribed it, one of them was in the channel. And this was a dropout channel, meaning the person was completely out, eyes closed, talking completely differently. You can listen to recordings of these channelings and make of them what you will. As I have learned more and more, I still am unveiling things even after going through it one time. It is deep and it is complex and it rings true. There is so much of it that appears to be valid in my experience, and others have mentioned this as well. What we learn spiritually as children, as we read the Bible, is just like first grade. It's just a very basic initial understanding of spirituality. Understanding what we're going through is much more complex than anything in the Bible, and it's a part of nature and what is reflected all around us. You can see fourth density, fifth density. You can see the nature of what I'm describing here by every element of nature. There are fields around everything that you see and that also interact on a group level. And so there is an evolving nature to everything that we see. Everything is evolving around us. It is a universe of evolution. That is the genius of it. Everything is constantly getting better and improving, constantly, bit by bit. And now we have this opportunity to access a much more complicated reality. The density is complication. So this is sort of discussed in many places, and there are many scholars that have started to look at the law of one material, and there's some physics to it as well. So I have some different transcriptions. Other resources are Carla Ruckert's writings about the law of one. She has several places that she writes about it, including A Wanderer's Handbook, which is amazing. But there is a sort of cosmology that can seem complex to understand about this information. And the more you understand it, the better it resonates with you, and you have a greater understanding of what is actually happening when you're shifting into a fourth density environment. And if you don't know what that means, that's okay. I'm going to try to explain what I mean when I say density. Understanding what density means is important. But there is a physics to this. And this physics we saw recently. I was in my RealityCon 2 event, and when I had taught this in that event, talking about the social memory complex and what is actually happening as you move into a new Earth experience. One of the interesting things is this new fourth density light photon, which we understand that everything is made up of these photons. All of matter around us is made up of these light photons. So right now we have third density light photons. Predominantly, most of the objects around us are from this third density. But there is this new potential photon that is available. It is a potential. So it becomes available as people learn that they can access it. And as they do, they start to form social memory complexes. And the environment in which we exist becomes much more complicated. You have a greater awareness, more senses. You can see energy fields. You can hear thoughts and a variety of other things. Everything is moving towards complexity. Just like when you went through school, first grade was much easier than sixth grade. When you're moving up these levels, each class got harder. And boy, did I hate Calculus 3 after starting out with addition and subtraction. And the whole universe is created. Even with the Fibonacci sequence, we can see the nature of this complexity that is a part of everything. The densities of experience are a series of environments from the first through the seventh density. Each succeeding density designed to function to offer us material for the evolution of our bodies, minds, and spirits. Each density or grade has inner or thought planes and outer or physical planes. Supposedly, we are now in third density. But what is a density exactly? Various disciplines use the word in different ways. The dictionary definition of density is the quality of being dense, close, or compact, or the quantity or number of something per unit. In physics, it is defined as the ratio of the mass of an object to its volume. A trustworthy Larson scholar, Bruce Peret, makes a distinction between the thought planes and the outer planes. He says, what I understood from the raw material is that density is a measurement of the overall complexity of some structure, form, or entity in a temporal rather than spatial sense. To use raw terms, the density of an object is the size of the time/space it occupies, whereas the volume is the size of the space/time it occupies. Bruce is using the raw's term space/time for the physical universe and the time/space for the metaphysical or cosmic universe. He's saying that he does not think the raw group's term density refers to the normal physical universe at all, but rather to the metaphysical universe which interpenetrates our physical world. Since I feel that all of us who are awakened spiritually have become denizens of the metaphysical or inner universe, this distinction means that we are looking at density as a metaphysical measure of light. Further, Bruce says these densities or quanta of light are not all the same light. The discrete domains of light that Ra refers to are misleading, Peret says, because light is a bit more complex on the higher densities than it is here on the third. The one we are all very familiar with, a third density photon, is not the same thing as a sixth density photon. There is more of a change than just frequency. In each density of creation, particles contain a certain density of light. The higher the density, the more densely packed with light a light beam or photon is. The more densely packed the light, the more intelligent energy is available within it. Those of Quo say about higher densities, the very word density is misleading, for it would somehow suggest that each succeeding density is more pallid or frail. The opposite, however, is true, that in each density further than the last, there is a higher density of light. Bruce adds, your densities are basically groupings of levels of complexity. First density is the simplest form, inanimate matter, body. When mind joins body into a body-mind complex, a second density is reached, and we see it as simple life forms, plants. When spirit gets in the act, we have our existence, the mind, body, spirit complex. Third density, three connected components, the animal kingdoms, and a very complex entity. This is the way evolution increases complexity. And density is a measurement of complexity. To put it simply, the more ingredients in the soup of dimensions interacting to form an entity, the more complex the recipe is, and thus the higher its density. And Ra has a pretty simple kitchen, only 7 major ingredients, the 7 dimensions forming the first through 7 densities. So our third density light has three aspects, or dimensions within its photon, which Bruce calls body light, mind light, and spirit light, and which I would call beingness light, consciousness light, and self-awareness light. In each succeeding density, the light contains the characteristics from earlier densities, but places them within the new photon's dimensional signature. The fourth density addition then would be love light. The fifth ingredient, understanding light. The sixth density is unity light. And the seventh density would add completion light, or the gateway to intelligent infinity light. But for short, they are all right. The basic building blocks of each density being the photon of that density. Bruce's very interesting letter on densities as used by the Ra includes this provocative thought, which places our minds or consciousness, which survive the bodily death, in time/space, and therefore specifically sets us as metaphysical entities in the time/space or metaphysical sector. When I started to use the raw material to extend Larsonian physics, one of the things I discovered was that time/space, which Larson refers to as the cosmic sector, is what Ra calls mind. In the body/mind/spirit complex, body being space/time, therefore density also refers to the capacity of the mind versus the capacity of the physical brain. Again, I would use the term consciousness rather than mind to differentiate between the good old workhorse of the physical brain and the eternal and metaphysical mind, which becomes creator as it fully realizes itself through these densities. Don Elkins is investigating the nature of these densities in the raw material when he asks, I understand that the first density is composed of core atomic vibrations that are in the red spectrum, second in the orange, etc. Am I to understand that the core vibrations of our planet are still in the red, and that second density beings are still in the orange at this space/time right now? And that each density, as it exists on our planet right now, has a different core vibration, or is this incorrect? I am Ra. This is precisely correct. So by implications, it can be seen that there are 7 densities in our creation, divided as are our energy centers by descriptive terms using the rainbow of colors, red through violet. First density is red, second density orange, third density yellow, fourth density green, fifth density blue, sixth density indigo, and seventh density violet. The colors of the rainbow. Our planet is activated in red, orange, and yellow densities at this time, as we are a third density planet. Although within this third density, we have in each of our bodies all 7 energy centers, corresponding to the whole range of inner and outer planes of creation. Elkins explores further when he asks, then as the fourth density vibrations come in, this means that the planet can support entities of fourth density core vibration. Will the planet then still be first density core vibration, and will there be second density entities on it with second density vibrations, and will there be third density entities on it with third density vibrations? Ross says, you must see the Earth, as you call it, as being 7 Earths. There is red, orange, yellow, and there will soon be a completed green color vibratory locus for fourth density entities, which they call Earth. During the fourth density experience, due to the lack of development of fourth density entities, the third density planetary sphere is not useful for habitation, since the early fourth density entity will not know precisely how to maintain the illusion that fourth density cannot be seen or determined from any instrumentation available to any third density. Thus, in fourth density, the red, orange, and green energy nexi of your planet will be activated, while the yellow is in potentiation along with the blue and the indigo. it may be hundreds of years before this transition is completed. So I imagine the first citizens of fourth density Earth shall be very special in that they will know how to remain invisible and unseen by third density populations that remain for a time. Recently in the RealityCon event, it felt like we created that fourth density social memory complex, which is the beginning of that complexity, that new light that we added, and it felt real. You can ask people that attended the conference. We had disruptions in energy service while it happened. We had people being channeled, being told that this was happening. We had even further channelings and beings and guides saying that something significant had happened and that we had evolved during that session. We had a meditation where we joined together, something that I will also be adding to the podcast. But this was the level of density that was occurring. And I believe that we are those people that are the beginning of this fourth density. And so we don't know how to keep this density invisible. There'll be a point in time where the world will start to realize our power. Anyways, the first density is the elemental density of earth, air, wind, and fire. It begins in the timelessness it shares with the final density in the previous creation before this one. And only towards the end of first density does creation, time, and space as we know them form from the undifferentiated swirl of energy. Our ocean, sky, and mountain express late first density. The second density sees the advent of motile entities such as amoeba, plants, and animals. This density is characterized by movement towards the light, and life forms literally turn to that light for invigoration and regeneration. It is a density of intelligence of a kind, but not self-awareness. The third density, which we together enjoy at this time, is the first density of self-aware entities, and its denizens begin to seek the lessons of love by making the initial choice as to their path or style of seeking and realizing that love. The fourth density is the density of love or understanding, and its citizens seek to perfect this knowledge and begin the lessons of wisdom. The fifth density is the wisdom density, and its denizens complete the study of wisdom. The sixth is sought and found. In this density, the split of positive and negative paths, which begin with the choice in third density, is again unified as negative sixth density entities realize they can go no further until they fully accept that all entities are one in the Creator and switch their polarity in one fell swoop. The seventh density is the density of foreverness. Here, self-aware entities complete all lessons of all kinds and eventually are drawn by spiritual gravity back into the unpotentiated Creator, the density then moving into the timelessness in which first density began. Those of Quo add to our knowledge of the purposes of densities 1 through 3. Each density has its purpose. Now we would preface this line of thinking by pointing out that the seeming progression of densities is an artifact of time and space and is not the deepest truth of the cosmos and its makeup. In a deeper reality, or shall we say a more shallow illusion, all time and space is one. And as an entity, therefore, each seeker is working simultaneously upon all densities and subdensities. However, within incarnation, there is time, there is space, and there is progression. Therefore, we use the concept of densities to indicate which lessons are learned. First, which lessons are the foundation for further lessons. In first density, the lesson is simply consciousness. In second density, the lesson involves the turning to the light, the beginning of choices. In third density, which you now enjoy, the lesson is learning how to love and how to accept love. These lessons are two sides of the one coin of love. You've entered into this incarnative experience because you felt there was room for improvement in your understanding of love. Now there are other reasons which cause you to wish to come at this time having to do with service to this planet and its peoples in this time of transformation on a planetary scale. But each has lessons to learn. And so we would focus upon the core beingness of the self as it can in a stable manner be experienced healthfully within incarnation. It is interesting to see the densities as an artifact of space/time or physical reality. Supposedly there are further octaves of experience after this present creation, each containing these 7 densities, but at a higher octave of vibration. So as Ed Weigel notes, there is no end to them. I understand that the process going on here does not end here. Our evolution is a process that is endless. These densities, though discrete, are not separated to the point that we cannot gain access to densities we are not presently enjoying. Elkins asks, were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or plans set up by the Logos other than those we have discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities? Ra says, I am Ra. One more, that is, the permeability of the densities so that there may be communication from density to density and from plane to plane or subdensity to subdensity. Given that our energy system is compatible with the energy characteristics of inner planes or outer densities, which are higher, then we have the potential for freedom of movement that is total metaphysically speaking. Don, in trying to get a clear idea of our place in the scheme of things, asks, I would like to know how the mind-body-spirit complex originates, going as far back as necessary. How does the origination occur? Ross says, we ask you to consider that you are attempting to trace evolution. This evolution is, as we have previously described, the consciousness being first in first density without movement, a random thing. Whether you might call this mind or body complex is a semantic problem. We call it mind/body complex, recognizing always that in the simplest iota of this complex exists in its entirety the one infinite creator. This mind/body complex then in second density, discovering the growing and turning towards the light, thus awakening what you may call the spirit complex, that which intensifies the upward spiraling towards the love and light of the infinite creator. The addition of this spirit complex, though apparent rather than real, it having existed potentially from the beginning of space/time, perfects itself by graduation into third density. When the mind-body-spirit complex becomes aware of the possibility of service to self or other self, then the mind-body-spirit complex is activated. We can begin to get a more full idea of our own complexity here and for our path of evolution. We begin as elemental. We grow as second density creatures and come into the beginning of our self-awareness as a soul or spiritual being in this our third density of experience. The length of densities is for the most part quite Ionian and protracted. Elkins asks, could you give me an idea of the length of the first and second densities as they occurred for this planet? I am Ra. There is no method of estimation of the time-space before timelessness gave way in your first density. To the beginnings of your time, the measurement would be vast, and yet this vastness is meaningless. Upon the entry into the constructed space-time, your first density spanned a bridge of space-time and time-space of perhaps 2 billion of your years. Second density is more easily estimated and represents your longest density in terms of the span of space-time. We may estimate that time is approximately 4.6 billion years. These approximations are exceedingly rough due to the somehow uneven development which is characteristic of creations which are built upon the foundation stone of free will. Densities 4 through 7 are also quite long. However, our third density is extremely short. Relatively speaking, this is because there is a singular purpose to third density. One single pivotal choice to make and then seat solidly in the consciousness. To fill in some detail, Don asks further about second and third density. Then there were second density entities here prior to approximately 75,000 years ago? What type of entities were there? I am Ra. The second density is the density of the higher plant life and animal life which exists without the upward drive towards the infinite. These second density beings are of an octave of consciousness, just as you find various orientations of consciousness among the conscious entities of your vibration. Where did these beings come from? Were they a product of evolution as understood by our scientists? Were they evolved from the original material of the earth that you spoke of? Ra says, I am Ra, this is correct. They then ask, do these beings then evolve from second density to third density? I am Ra, this is correct. Although no guarantee can be made of the number of cycles it will take an entity to learn the lessons of consciousness of self, which are the prerequisite for transition to third density. Then how does the second density progress to the third? Ra says, I am Ra, the second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complexes, thus becoming mind-body-spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirit. It seems a marvelous thing to be a second density creature, and I believe that our bodies remain second density entities which have given themselves over to the consciousness implanted within them during the birth process and the development of that consciousness within incarnation. One characteristic of this third density is its unremitting social nature. The essence of third density, learn teaching and teach learning, Ra says, is that there are other selves to which one must relate in choosing the manner of that relationship with others. The choice of polarity becomes first recognized and then made. The third density physical vehicle was designed to function only in what you may call the family. By oneself, one cannot reproduce and create new life. Without other selves working in cooperation, your own self will be unable to create a meeting of all needs. The essence of what you may call human is an absolute need for relationship with other selves. We may have noticed the pronounced tendency for urban people, especially, but people in general, to keep more to themselves, and for wanderers to be real loners. We are not grappling with our very real social and ecological challenges, most of us. Socialization, let alone activism, requires commitments of time that don't seem possible. Yet we have a globe full of other selves with whom to come into spiritual, social, and ecological community. Elkins asks, third density then, compared to the rest of the densities, all of them, is nothing but a uniquely short period of what we consider to be time, and is for the purpose of this choice. Is this correct? Ra says, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. The prelude to choice must encompass the laying of the foundation, the establishment of the illusion, and the viability of that which can be made spiritually viable. The remainder of the densities is continuous refining of the choice. This also is greatly lengthened as you would use the term. The choice is, as you put it, the work of a moment, but is the axis upon which the creation turns. What is the nature of this choice? The entire vibratory nexus, Ross says, which you call third density, is that which you make the foundation of choice, which each of you has already made to be of service to others, and to live a life in faith. Your basic contribution is living the life in faith, not in being happy or melancholy or useful or productive, but in being a certain kind of entity, an entity that is able to shine through the windows of the eyes and the smile upon the lips with the light of the one infinite Creator. And I love that image of the Creator shining out through our faces when we smile with a genuine warmth. And often I can feel the energy pouring through me when just being in the garden or speaking with someone or writing as I am now. Here is a challenging thought from the Quo principle or group. The very foundation of third density is based upon what is described as a mistake, that is, a choice to know good and evil, therefore to die. All of the third density environment is necessarily founded upon dynamic opposites, and the choice for or against the radiance of living and dying as opposed to the magnetic pulling and grabbing at life and the fearful pushing away of death. It may seem that this choice to live and die, to be imperfect, and to choose between imperfectly derived essences may be a foolish choice, but it is this very environment which creates the test conditions for the growth and the learning of that within each, which may be called the seeker or the higher self. That is, that self which aspires to move more and more fully into the radiant energy of the one creator. After this process of working within incarnation in third density, graduation occurs. Some may well feel they are ready for it and some not. The idea of moving from third density to fourth and beyond seems like a reasonable expectation. Though I find the paradigm shift a happy event, it is still yet part of a grander happening. Living as if it is all one is an interesting practice and empowering. I go to a bookstore, and the overwhelming amount of material regarding enlightenment, I think, kind of puts me in a state of shock, because I feel at some base level that I've run out of time. I blew it. What really winds my clock is all of this info coming out regarding third density entities versus the fourth density reality that's coming. I am humbled to the point of wanting to crawl into a hole and never come out. How can anyone be certain of their evolution? How can anyone know for certain if they're going to make it to fourth density? But the harvest has already begun on planet Earth, and as we each die, we walk these steps of light that Ra describes. As much as any other native inhabitant, wanderers will be expected to walk the steps of light when this incarnational experience is at an end. And just as much as any native inhabitant of Earth, if the steps are walked to a point of comfort within third density, the wanderer shall not return to its home vibratory nexus, but rather shall continue in third density until graduation is achieved. Do you see why becoming a wanderer is such an incredibly brave choice? Because you are having to take the test just like anyone else. And I failed the test at the beginning of my life. I failed it. I would be definitely returning to third density. I only hope that I can move on to fourth density. By this process, we hope to enter fourth density after graduation. Earth shall continue as a fourth density positive planet, its third density dying out naturally over a period of centuries, until the third density humankind is completely gone. Fourth density will be invisible to third density, even though the planes interpenetrate each other. Elkins asks, is an entity in the fourth density normally invisible to us? I am Ra. The fourth density is by choice not visible to third density. It is possible for fourth density to be visible. However, it is not the choice of the fourth density entity to be visible due to the necessity for concentration upon a rather difficult vibrational complex, which is the third density you experience. It is thoughtful of fourth density beings to leave us to our hard work. Don asks, how does a third density planet become a fourth density planet? Ra says, I am Ra. The fourth density is as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space/time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individuals and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of being able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding, is not effective with your present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. Elkins asks, then what will be the time of transition on this planet from third to fourth density? Ra says, this is difficult to estimate due to the uncharacteristic anomalies of this transition. There are at this space-time nexus beings incarnate which have begun fourth density work. However, the third density climate of planetary consciousness is retarding the process. At this particular nexus, the possibility-probability vortices indicate somewhere between 100 and 700 of your years as transition period. This cannot be accurate due to the volatility of your peoples at this space-time. Elkins says, does this fact that the basic vibration that we experience now is true color green or fourth density account for the fact that there are many mental effects upon material objects that are now observable for the first time in a mass way, such as bending of metal by mind. Ross says this is not only correct, but we suggest you take this concept further and understand the great number of entities with the so-called mental diseases being due to the effect of this green ray true color upon the mental configurations of those unready mentally to face the self for the first time. When you read that you can see what's happening now. The anger, the conspiratorial nature of reality, the media, Twitter, the bickering, all that stuff is people becoming aware in fourth density, causing mental diseases because the mental configuration of those are unready to face the self for the first time. And Bruce Peret adds, concerning my questioning about fourth density as seen from third, the third density has limited frequency range for light, simply because there is no other way for light to express itself in this density. It's like filling a box with ping pong balls. Once the box is full, it's full. In order for light to manifest on another density, it must either lose or gain something. That something is dimension. When a photon learns how to move in the density of love, then that photon becomes fourth density and a new range of expression opens up to it. An empty box. Since it cannot be expressed in third density, we see a shadow of it, a third density projection of a fourth density object, which appears to be a radical change in frequency of the light. Clearly, this harvest of Earth is being a difficult one for its people and for its planet as well. It is not one bit surprising that we are sharing the difficulties of this troubled harvest age. Dawn asks about our immediate future in fourth density on Earth. We are now in the fourth density. Will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in our environment and our effect upon our environment? Now, he asked this question in 81. The fourth density, Ross says, is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and star into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vortices of reception of the instreaming of cosmic forces expressing themselves as vibrational webs, so that the Earth will thus be fourth density magnetized, as you may call it. This is going to occur with some inconvenience due to the energies of the thought forms of your peoples, which disturb the orderly constructs of energy patterns within your Earth spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment while making itself appropriately magnetized for fourth density. This is the planetary adjustment. You will find a sharp increase in the number of people, as you call mind-body-spirit complexes, whose vibrational potentials include the potential for fourth vibrational distortions. Thus, there will seem to be, shall we say, a new breed. These are those incarnating for fourth density work. There will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind-body-spirit complexes and social complexes due to the polarizing conditions of the sharp delineation between fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. Those who remain in fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all the best efforts of the Confederation, which includes those from your people's inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. What will fourth density positive be like? Those of Ross say, we ask you to consider as we speak that there are not words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what it is not and approximate what it is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited until we become without words. That which fourth density is not, it is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements, it is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle which is more denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thought of other selves. It is a plane wherein one is aware of vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Now, that last part I always found interesting, where it says individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. So we are all pronouncedly individualized, but harmonized at the same time. Our work with relationships in third density makes sense in terms of where we are going. Higher densities are permeated with groups, especially on the positive path. In fourth density, we are working on love, in fifth with wisdom, and in sixth, the unification and balance of these two aspects of the Creator, which correspond to love or logos and to light. Many seekers would question the order of densities 4 and 5, or love and wisdom. Wisdom seems so attractive and peaceful compared to love. However, to me, this makes sense. Love needs to be learned and learned thoroughly before wisdom is sought, for wisdom without love is wicked indeed. Lucifer's name means light bringer. This principle brings light without love. Those who seek for wisdom in third density are seeking after that which is out of place and not part of this density. Are we trying to build a stairway of wisdom and truth that will get us to heaven? Let us cease immediately and apply ourselves instead to the lessons and choices of this present experience. It is all about love, as the old musical group Earth, Wind, and Fire have sung. The sixth density is also that density where the positive and negative paths which split for fourth, fifth, and early sixth are again unified. As the negative entities continue, Ra says, to pursue this path of separation and control, at some point, in order to continue in the process of evolution and to know more of the Creator and to exercise the power of the Creator, it becomes necessary to see other selves as the Creator and as the self. This is not difficult for the positive polarity, but it is difficult enough for the negative polarity that the negative polarity must be abandoned and the power that has been gained from it be used to reverse, shall we say, the polarity in order that continued evolution be possible. The sixth density also offers to us in the third density a special gift, our higher self. Elkins asks, you said that each third density entity has a higher self in the sixth density, which is moving to the mind-body-spirit complex of the entity as needed. Does this higher self also evolve in growth through the densities beginning with the first density, and does each higher self have a corresponding higher self advanced in densities beyond it? Ra says, I am Ra. The higher self is a manifestation given to the late sixth density mind-body-spirit complex as a gift from its future selfness. The mid-seventh density's last action before turning towards the allness of the Creator and gaining spiritual mass is to give this resource to the sixth density self, moving as you measure time in the stream of time. This self, the mind-body-spirit complex of late sixth density, has then the honor duty of using both the experiences of its total living bank of memory of experience, thoughts, and actions, and using the resource of the mind-body-spirit complex totality left behind as a type of infinitely complex thought form. In this way, you may see yourself, higher self or oversoul, and your mind-body-spirit complex totality as 3 points in a circle. The only distinction is that of your time-space continuum, all are the same being. Those of Quo describe seventh density as the final lesson are learned in the last of the densities of light. The entities begin to take upon themselves that which you may call a spiritual mass, so that there is the great desire to move into complete union once again with the one Creator, and this union is achieved so that each entity brings each experience with it as an offering or glorification to the one Creator. Each such offering, then taken cumulatively, becomes the seeding of another great octave of experience and cycle of beingness as the one creator once again sends out portions of itself to gain an experience, to learn that which can only be learned by the giving of free will choice to those portions of itself that venture out as pilgrims into what is to each the great unknown and mystery of being. All in all, this cosmology satisfies something in me that has never been completely satisfied before, in that there are offered good and logical reasons for suffering and choices, and a solid explanation of good and evil, or polarity. In my opinion, this is where many systems fall apart. Either they see good and evil as never being able to be reconciled, as the fundamentalist Christian or Muslim looking at a war between good and evil that does not end, or they negate the reality of evil. Neither solution has ever suited me. Third density is the density of choice, and that is what you're in now. To reel our minds back from the great spread of densities of experience, we can concentrate on this present third density experience, the one we are working on right now. Those of Quo say, "How we admire you." We remember third density. It is the shortest of the densities, the density of choice. You are here to choose to serve the Creator by serving others or by serving the self and manipulating others. As you serve others, you may be asked to do outrageous things, to go beyond your limitations, to do what cannot be done, yet which shall be done because it must. And in those situations, we strongly advise that you release your personal personality and move to an impersonal portion of your deep self, that God self of unmitigated and straightforward compassion. Here we see Quo bringing up the impersonal self. To determine what is pleasing as opposed to what is serving another entity is sometimes difficult, especially on the spur of the moment. Therefore, we ask you to steep yourselves as you would immolate a tea bag in the teacup in the love and the light of the Infinite One. That what needs to be done for you to polarize, for you to choose, may be done with this instrument we'll call gladness and singleness of heart. For those of Quo share more about service to self versus service to others, the great choice of paths we face in third density. The nature of third density is primarily dictated by the lessons which have been prepared for each seeker to walk with, and for the goal towards which each lessons point. The basic nature of your illusion is division into opposites, for yours is the density of choice. Yours is an illusion rich in either or. The raw material which you bring into this illusion is itself duplicate. On the one hand, you bring to these lessons a physical, mental, emotional complex of great instinctual beauty, symmetry, and harmony. The physical vehicle of third density is unimaginably rich in sense perceptions. At all times, the inner eye is filled with an enormous variety of sense perceptions. These are instinctually prioritized and held an instinctual state of balance. This is that second density creature which has accepted the role of carrying your consciousness about for this incarnative experience. And Joseph Combe adds, the negatives are going to be trying to pull you one way, the positives the other. You have an angel on your left shoulder and an angel on your right. Guess which one is Hell's Angel? I have the same problem, I understand, good luck. I'm far from saint material, I assure you. I use my 49% quite enthusiastically on numerous occasions, and sometimes love every minute of it. I like living close to the edge of the precipice. I guess anyway, now for the inspiring news, when you get these negative feelings, you need to realize this is not a game, it is the real thing. Joseph Combe, I love that. Of course, in a way, it is a game, a most divine game, and one which we do not need to take seriously, wanderers or not. The Oxal group says, in addition to those lessons which are learned in a manner native to those who work through the third density for the first time, those who are what you call wanderers bring a certain task and a certain responsibility, which may be viewed as operating so as to put into an unique light, a particular slant or bias, those precise lessons which within third density all must learn. And so in a sense, the task is compounded proportionate to the unique gifts which have been brought from other densities, so that they may be laid down in service to the souls which seek so hungrily to reach beyond the limits which are those of third density, a density of choice. It is an old idea and an ideal that to those to whom much has been given, much may be expected. Identify our unique gifts then and look for ways to share them. Sometimes it may seem that there is no place that will appreciate our gifts, that this world is very negative. Don Elkins thought so, asking, "Can you tell me why you say that the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative, since there seems to be much negativity here now?" I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. That is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your time-space present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of a harvestable quality. As odd as this may seem, in some instances, a wanderer may even fail to recognize service to self or other negative orientations. Elkins asks, "Are there many wanderers who have and are coming to our planet subject to the Orion thoughts?" I am Ra. As we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density and mind-body complex. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind-body spirit complex of this planetary sphere. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex, which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind-body spirit complex. This is not more than bias and cannot be called an understanding. Furthermore, the wanderer is in its own mind-body spirit less distorted toward the, shall we say, deviousness of third density positive-negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. Elkins says, "Then would the wanderers as they incarnate here be high priority targets of the Orion group?" I am Ra. This is correct. If a wanderer should be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion group, what would happen to this wanderer when harvest came? I am Ra. If the wanderer entity demonstrated through action a negative orientation toward other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration. When harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. Wanting to avoid that repetition of third density, we would like to be serenely wise and calm, but we are, for the most part, not. We are confused. However, this is perfectly okay. Ross says, "We would commend to your attention the virtue of confusion, the virtue and helpfulness of being caught, of being puzzled, of being taken out of oneself so that self is revealing self to self in a spontaneous manner. These characteristics of self provide the structure for learning within third density. They present to the seeker carefully orchestrated choices that are subjectively oriented to offer the best opportunity for polarization of consciousness, without personality, but simply with self-awareness and the choice before one. The seeker will move without error into full awareness. Yet this awareness teaches nothing. It does not connect with the biological entity in a way that furthers spiritual evolution. It is the foolish personality, the ego, the self, that thinks a million thoughts and does a million deeds in its heart, and that foolish entity alone that interacts with free will and finds ever deeper and truer choices that create and recreate the self ever anew. And as we go, we do need to face our utter free will and responsibility to make this choice. I love the thought of the Creator having created us capable of learning how to consciously lead the dance, so the Creator can lose itself in our swirling arms, and through our conscious observer awareness to experience what it has created without being constantly reminded of having created it at all. Almost like giving the Creator a day off. Just even once in our lives, surrendering gladly our illusion of being the victim and simply enjoying the responsibility for what we have chosen. There is a point to this exercise. Even beyond our own spiritual evolution, there are extravagant opportunities for service in this density of the dim and shadowy way. There is nothing to fear. You are free. And in the third density illusion, you can be of the greatest assistance to each other that you shall ever be to anyone. We cannot possibly emphasize enough the height, the breadth, and the depth of the possibilities for service in your earthen vessel over body. For yours is the density of choice. You shall choose your priority or have already chosen. And as you serve, you are aiding the one whom you serve to choose his or her polarity or to increase it. We are likely to remain confused. How to clarify matters. How shall we go about seeing this choice? How can we recognize it? We need to listen to our heart's desires. The object of third density is we feel the making of a certain choice, a choice of paths. This choice is not simply a verbal one or a mental one. In order for this choice to be made so that the entity within has truly chosen, choices are made within the fire of unknowing, within that chasm where there is no footing but only air. The process that seekers go through in order to attain a firmly made choice is not an intellectual process, nor even an intellectual emotional process, but rather it is, as this instrument would say, a journey from head to heart, so that it matters not so much whether one sees clearly as it matters, more that one may desire more clearly. Quo says to hone the edge of the thirst for truth is to improve that search in its efficacy. Again, it is not what the seeker knows, but what the seeker desires that creates the character of the distortions that the seeker is likely to settle upon as that which is the least distorted version of truth. Once it has been accepted that all truths are to some extent distortions of a truth that is ineffable and unknowable, then there is perhaps an easier and more relaxed attitude towards this process of knowing the truth. If all things are shadows, if all things are to some extent not what they seem, then the heart is free to open in pure desire to whatever truth it may pick up with its various antennae, which it does not know it has, but which the being which lies within knows well how to use. Lynn Herman suggests that deciding the way we want to be helps in pinning this all-important choice down, saying, I think most of us are pretty sure which polarity we want to be rather than know for sure which polarity we have been up until this point. Up until this moment of decision, we are one of those wandering around in confusion and ignorance. We are neither here nor there. When we make the choice, this is what I want to be, then I believe strongly that is what we will be. The choice is what will determine all our future actions, since we have stated firmly, sincerely, and categorically that is what we desire. The universe will aid and assist us to achieve this goal if we are sincere and make this known to ourselves and our higher self. We can't do it ourselves. We have our egos to battle, and our egos are very clever. The ego tells us we are separate from all in order to preserve itself. The only thing we need to do is to make the choice and then to ask for help, keeping in mind that what you are seeing manifest unpleasantly in others is only ego and not the truth. When you are judging yourself as being unworthy, then you are playing to the ego. The ego needs these doubts and fears to exist. The ego is not who you are, and it is not who others are. See it for the illusion it is, and see what is under the illusion. Then don't worry. Unconditional love is not developed overnight. Treat others as if they were worthy of your love, even if you can't give it. One day you will be able to. Another way to look at the making of ethical choices is to invoke the fool's choice of blind faith. In the portion of the spirit's journey, quote says, through the present octave, that is third density, the crux or focus of the learning that is offered in third density is the choice. This archetypal image of a young man stepping off into thin air, no suggestion of a bridge, no suggestion of another shore, but simply the walking off of cliff into perfect faith. As each entity awakens to her spiritual identity, that which has awakened is in part that fool, and that which lies before that entity is a step into midair. And once that step has been made and the air has seemed to solidify about the new vantage point, a cliff will appear once more. And the fool must needs step over that one as well, and the next, and the next. And each time that this occurs, the seeker, that fool, has reprised the choice. One last suggestion: look for the love. Act as its hands, voice, and ambassador. The decision that you make, which will profoundly affect the many choices that you make, is the decision to seek love. Not any kind of love, not any description of love, to seek love. To seek love is to seek one of the primal distortions from the infinite creator. To seek love is to seek the great intelligence that fills the energetic consciousness of the universe with purpose. We may also seek this great intelligence in others. All we meet are mirrors that reflect the love and light of the one infinite creator. All are angels unawares. Sometimes we are bemused and blindfolded by our own reflections, but occasionally we meet someone who is transparent to the creator for us, and their love's face shines in human form. It happens often to me. I'm so grateful to and sensitive to the beauty in so many people I meet and talk with. I am fortunate, more than most, for much of my outer service is talking to, encouraging, and supporting outsiders and wanderers, and so I meet a very special and sweet tribe of beings. This one great original thought of the infinite creator is love. This creative love is the radiance that appeals to and attracts the service to others oriented or positive speaker. Our third density experience is all about love and about the choice of our path of pursuing love as love of others or love of self. This state of being drawn or attracted to something is polarity. Polarity, as commonly used in the physical world, is that property expressed by bodies having magnetic poles, either positive and attractive or negative and repulsive. This term is defined in terms of the magnetic field of the Earth, the positive pole being designated the north, and the negative the south. However, for work in metaphysics, we may understand polarity as any tendency to turn, grow, think, or feel in a certain way because of magnetic attraction or repulsion. As Quo puts it, just as your battery within your automobile is able to function because of the potential difference between positive and negative charge, so is the seeker of truth able to do work in consciousness according to its ability to polarize itself in the positive or service to others fashion in an effective manner. Bruce Peret suggests that the polarity of first density is electrical and that magnetic polarity is a creature of second density. The difference between electric and magnetic polarities is the number of dimensions involved. Electric is one-dimensional, magnetic is two-dimensional. As a rough analogy, you could think of it as electricity being the initial concept of polarity in the first density and magnetic as the concept of polarity in the second density. Moreover, he suggests that a good synonym for polarity is dichotomy. I typically refer to polarity by the word dichotomy, division into two contradictory parts or opinions. Polarity tends to deal with the extremes of poles in opposition rather than contradiction, though I can understand why Ra uses polarity because they are trying to deal with the extremes of service to self and service to others, the big choice of this density. I dislike polarity because it is tied to physical properties. You know how it is with esoteric and metaphysical literature. Every word means something different to every reader. It is so true that words are slippery things, especially when we attempt to take words beyond the bounds of their first use, as with polarity. In talking with my scientist friend, I told him that when I think about polarity, I think in terms of attraction rather than repulsion, that I think of service to others as the attraction to good rather than the repulsion by evil. Bruce replied, "Perhaps you should think in terms of attract and repel rather than repulse, which has emotional connotation. A person who is spiritually attracted to good will naturally be repelled by evil. Note that this is a co-magnetic relationship, not a magnetic one, where like poles good or evil attract and opposites repel. Thus, when a positive seeker starts to wander near evil, opposites repel. They are simply pushed away from it. Likewise, when they wander near good, they are pulled closer. Understand also that some people are attracted to evil. It works both ways. Service to others moves towards the good pole, and service to self towards the evil pole, and both words, good, evil, are a matter of perspective. What is good to service to self is evil to service to others, and vice versa. We acquire polarity by being attracted to one of the poles of the magnet, the metaphysical magnetic poles being good and evil. Just as an element is pulled to the anode in chemical electrocatalysis, we are pulled to the lodestone of love by our desire to experience and share in this love of the Creator. As beginners in the school of life and love, we are like soft iron, pulled to the magnet, but not in any lasting way. However, as we make and remake the choice of love over fear, giving over taking, and so forth, we gradually impart to ourselves a permanent status as magnet rather than simply magnetized. Once this is achieved, our work is exponentially easier, but it is a long time in coming, and we are never through within this density with the making of ethical choices. Don asks, Ra, yesterday we were talking about the split that occurs when an entity either consciously or unconsciously chooses the path that leads to either service to others or service to self. The philosophical question of why such a split even exists came up. It was my impression that just as it is in electricity, we have no polarity in electricity, we have no electricity, we have no action. Therefore, I'm assuming that it is the same in consciousness. If you have no polarity in consciousness, we also have no action or experience. Is this correct? Ross says this is correct. You may use the general term work. Bruce Peret points out that the first choice that established this dichotomy or polarity was the creator's. Since the one creator had to initiate this recursive dichotomy each time we make a decision, right or wrong, we are reenacting the creation process and creating a whole new flow of our life based on that decision. Isn't this what the one creator did to get the universe going? He made a choice. When we work in consciousness, then, all this work aids in polarization. Elkins says, I would ask if it is possible to increase polarity without increasing harvestability. Ross says the connection between polarization and harvestability is most important in third density harvest. In this density, an increase in the serving of others or the serving of the self will almost inevitably increase the ability of an entity to enjoy a higher intensity of light. Thus, in this density, we may say it is hardly possible to polarize without increasing in harvestability. So if we are polarizing, we are working towards graduation, a reassuring point. We are not involved in an abstract struggle to understand good and evil. We are rather ethical beings, spiritual entities, who by being attracted to the polarity of our choice are assisting and accelerating our spiritual evolution. Don asks again concerning polarity. When this major galaxy is formed by the Logos, polarity then exists in a sense that we have electrical polarity. We do have electrical polarity existing at that time, is that correct? I am Ra, and I accept this as correct, with the stipulation that you term electrical be understood as not only the one. Larson stipulated its meaning, but also in what you would call the metaphysical sense. Elkins says, are you saying that we have not only a polarity of electrical charge, but also a polarity in consciousness at this time? This is correct. All is potentially available, Ross says, from the beginning of your physical space-time. It then being the function of consciousness complexes to begin to use the physical materials to gain experience, then polarize in a metaphysical sense. Those of Quo take a look at polarity, this choice of service to others or service to self. When the one creator divided itself in order that it might further know itself, the division which took place became likened unto an illusion. For the result was the creation, and it is moment by moment the creation as you know it, and far beyond what you know. As the creator, which is simplicity itself, became that which seemed complex, the possibility of two means of traveling through the creation or each portion of the creation became apparent. That which moved in resonance with unity became that which you know as the service to others path, that which is radiant and expressed the light of the one creator to all about it, for all is seen the same self that is the one creator. The service to self path became possible when the first division in third density consciousness occurred due to the placement of what you call the veil of forgetting between the conscious and unconscious minds. This intensification of the illusion of separation provided to the creator a more intense and purified means for that portion of itself which may be seen as magnetic to function. Thus the service to self path is one which draws unto itself the light of the creator in all portions of the creation about the entity which has chosen this means of knowing itself and of evolving towards the same creator. Thus it is the same light which powers both paths in opposite fashions, or so it would seem within the saga of polarity, for as those of the service to others path give forth the light to all about them, it would seem that this action is in opposition to the service to self path, which absorbs the light and uses it for its own purposes. Yet in truth, It is the creator which provides the light for both paths, and the same creator which receives the light as a result of the action that is potentiating upon each path. I could certainly talk about this forever, but we understand the densities of experience, the nature of the polarities as we move by this single choice. And it's fascinating that we're in a density that is incredibly short compared to all the other densities. But it's easy to see how moving through these complexities is an amazing thing that can happen. The complexities is the nature of the self and the being of the self. As experienced in the reality con 2, we created the social memory complex. And it felt like in that moment, we had created another entity that had a beating heart that multiple people were a part of. And I believe that the beginning of this complexity moving into fourth density and the polarization is these groups form almost like conscious pendulums of people that are moving together as social memory complexes that eventually join together, the ones that are of service to others and the very few that form that are service to self, because service to self are unable to form social memory complexes. So eventually the social memory complexes start to dominate, and there's either one or the other. Either the people are manipulated into creating negative social memory complexes, which they do through pendulums, or they consciously create active, light-oriented social memory complexes, which are to join together, which we did in the reality con, and it is growing every single day. And this growing presence is what the future of the planet will be individual consciousness with access to everyone else's memories and experiences. Eventually, the Akashic record takes shape and takes form as a part of this living entity, melding into it, and at some point we have access to everyone's consciousness within the social memory complex, but only within this social memory complex, for our heart beats in another place outside of our heart as a living being, yet we are individuated. It's an entirely different form of consciousness, which is much more complex than simply the mind-body-spirit complex. It becomes the mind-body-spirit social memory complex, all interacting at the same time. And then if you can imagine, fifth density adds another variable, that of wisdom. And then the sixth density is one of unity. Each of these are actual variables of consciousness. So there is so much more we can talk about, and I could talk about this forever, but it's a good beginning step to understand densities of experience through Ra and Quo. Hopefully it helps you. In any case, check out the playlist on the Law of One and the Quo for further information about this. If you're like me, it fascinates you to no end. In any case, all episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.